Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Scotland at 7 on the 1st of April. First of all, the coronavirus update as of 2 o'clock today. A total of 1,821,122 people in Scotland have now been tested by NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the beginning of the pandemic. Of these, 1,602,690 have been confirmed negative, 218,432 have tested positive. There are 400 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. As you know, not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and therefore not all those with symptoms will be tested. There were 8 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive today. The number of patients in Scotland who've now died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,610. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 215 were in hospital last night, 21 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 o'clock this morning, 2,493,327 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 399,062 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 126,764 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 51 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And now to tonight's main news headlines. And first of all, the elections. The SNP is to scrap non-residential social care charges. The SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, has pledged that as a part of a national care service, if a re-elected SNP government will abolish all non-residential care charges. Legislation for a national care service will be introduced in the first year of a new SNP government. Speaking whilst visiting a pharmacy, where she also highlighted the SNP's delivery of free prescription charges for Scotland compared to charges of £9.35 in England, Ms Sturgeon said that as a part of a recovery from COVID, it's essential that health and social care in Scotland is fit for the challenges of the future. Figures from the Scottish Parliament's Information Centre show the average Scot receives 19 prescriptions a year, which in England would cost patients as much as £177.65. She said that the SNP is committed to implementing the recommendations of the independent Feely review into adult social care in Scotland, including scrapping non-residential care charges. Towards the end of the last Parliament, the Health Secretary, Jean Freeman, secured parliamentary backing to implement this as quickly as practicable. Nicola Sturgeon said that the principle that drove the SNP to scrap prescription charges was simple. Healthcare services should be free and based on the care you need and not your ability to pay. And that the same principle is what drives them to abolish non-residential social care charges for people of all ages. Fundamentally, if for someone's care they require the care services of things like Meals on Wheels, community wardens, lunch clubs, supported living assistance or community alarms and laundry, then they should not be charged for them. Now more on the election trail, and Nicola Sturgeon says women must be at the centre of COVID recovery plans. Speaking ahead of a hustings hosted by Engender this evening, the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon pledged to put women at the centre of the recovery from COVID, with a range of commitments to improve economic opportunities and healthcare. Ms Sturgeon also said that if re-elected, the SNP government would continue doing everything it could to make Scotland safer for women and girls, including a multi-year £100 million funding stream to back the rollout of the Scottish Government's landmark Equally Safe strategy. Commenting, Nicola Sturgeon said that she was proud to be Scotland's first female First Minister, but she has always been aware that this comes with huge responsibility. She said women have been on the front line of the battle against COVID-19, and that means they must be at the centre of the SNP's plans for recovery, including establishing a new women's business centre, new measures to help women financially at key moments in their life, such as suspending the interest on student loans during maternity leave. As a part of their NHS recovery, Ms Sturgeon said that the SNP the SNP introduce a women's health plan to tackle some of the health inequalities which have been made worse by the pandemic. And she went on to say that she would continue to work to make Scotland a safer place for women and girls to live in, with a new £100 million 3-year funding stream to back their Equally Safe strategy, to support frontline services and to focus on prevention of male violence against women and girls. Finally, the First Minister made a commitment to embed human rights in Scotland and to incorporate into Scots law the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. And now in more election news this evening, Glasgow City Council has voted overwhelmingly to end fossil fuel investments. This afternoon, Glasgow City Council overwhelmingly voted for a Scottish Green motion to end its pension fund investments in fossil fuels. The Strathclyde Pension Fund, which the Glasgow City Council is part of, has over £500 million worth of holdings in fossil fuel companies. As well as having its employees covered by the fund, the GCC is also the fund administrator on behalf of the Strathclyde Pension Fund trustees. The motion included below was part of the budget agreement between the SNP administration and the Scottish Green Party and sets a major precedent for other local authority pension funds. The Green Party councillor Kim Long, who moved the motion on April the 1st, said, "We're delighted that our motion was supported and that Glasgow City Council voted so overwhelmingly to stop investing in the fossil fuels which are destroying our planet. We know that in Glasgow the climate crisis will impact the poorest communities the hardest, and all the money the city plans to spend on mitigating this damage is wasted if we keep pouring money into the very thing that we know is making the problem worse." Local government pension funds are the single biggest public store of wealth in Scotland, so decisions like this can make a big difference. We need to stop fueling the crisis and instead invest in a green recovery to create a fairer and greener Glasgow we need. And now, more election news. The Liberal Democrats pledge mental health support in workplaces. The Scottish Liberal Democrat leader Willie Rennie has committed to help provide mental health first aiders for every workplace to help tackle what he described as a mental health crisis. Speaking in Edinburgh today, Mr Rennie said that adults regularly waited up to 2 years for mental health treatment and that this delay had a huge personal cost for those affected and for employers who lost working days due to mental health. In other election news, the UK government has been criticised for law-breaking aid budget cuts. The SNP has condemned Boris Johnson's Tory government for bypassing Parliament and ploughing ahead with law-breaking cuts to the aid budget in the middle of a pandemic. In November, it was confirmed that the Tories would break their manifesto and legal commitment to spend 0.7% of gross national income on overseas development aid. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab pledged that on the move, we will need to bring forward legislation in due course. However, the Tory government has backtracked on that commitment and the cut to the aid budget comes into force today, without legislation or parliamentary approval. The SNP has said that in stark contrast to the Westminster Tory government, the Scottish government has consistently committed to international development projects, and support, including a £10 million fund for international development and a £1 million humanitarian emergency fund. Now, the UK Labour say there is no case for rejoining the European Union. The UK Labour leader Keir Starmer said that he believes that there is no case for rejoining the EU. Responding to the Labour leader's statement, the SNP deputy leader Keith Brown today said that a vote for Labour is a vote for Boris Johnson to decide Scotland's future, and pointed out that the Brexit deal was hammering jobs and businesses in Scotland. Mr Brown said that the SNP is now the only main pro-EU party in the UK that is standing up for the people of Scotland and working to realise their wish to be part of the European Union. The SNP deputy leader went on to say that while the Tories dragged Scotland out of the EU against our will in the middle of a global pandemic, Labour stood idly by and allowed Boris Johnson to get his way, instead of protecting the jobs, the incomes and the rights that families in Scotland depend on. He said Keir Starmer's feeble attempts to duck the biggest issues facing the country won't wash with the voters. Labour must now get off the fence, be honest with people and accept the reality that the best deal for jobs, businesses and people's livelihoods is within the EU. Labour's prevaricating and their failure to provide any effective opposition to Boris Johnson's extreme Brexit means they have been just as responsible for the Tories for the damage done. Now, in other news, the Metropolitan Police officer is found guilty of belonging to a banned neo-Nazi terror group. A man has become the first serving British police officer to be convicted of a terrorism offence after he was found guilty of membership of a banned neo-Nazi group. Ben Hannum had been working as a probationary officer for the Metropolitan Police for nearly 2 years before his details were found on a leaked database of users of an extreme right-wing forum. The 22-year-old was found guilty on Thursday at the Old Bailey in London of membership of the terrorism group National Action, which was banned in December 2016. He was also convicted of lying on his application and his vetting forms to join the Met and having terrorism material detailing knife combat and making explosive devices. A ban on reporting the case was lifted after Hannum admitted possessing an indecent image of a child, which was to have been the subject of a separate trial. The Met has insisted that Hannum would never have been able to join the force had it known of his interest in the extreme right wing and his previous membership of National Action. However, the case has put the Met's vetting processes and the extent to which the force has kept pace with the evolution of far right under the spotlight. The force states online that it won't accept applications from anyone who is or has been a member of the BNP or similar organisations. The Met faces criticism for not asking Hannum's school for a reference, something which campaigners say would have flagged up concerns about his views. And now a Scottish dog food firm is to relocate to France due to export red tape. The founder of a Scottish dog food business has told how Brexit forced him to move to France after his exports to the European Union were halted because of the new trade barriers put in place since January the 1st. After 10 weeks of daily calls and emails to government representatives, who he said were absolutely terrible, Anton Murphy said he was left with no other option than to relocate or face losing the business. The trade deal they agreed at Christmas is very close to as good as no deal, he said. He set up Anton's Dog Chew Company in Ayrshire in 2005 and has grown it into a business with 19 staff and an annual turnover of more than £8 million. About 60% of his sales were dog chews made from deer antlers, a sustainable and a safer alternative to the bones popular in UK and the EU. He told of being hit by a double Brexit whammy with new documentation needed to certify his products that they comply with EU food health and safety standards, and a haulage industry that would not touch food exports from smaller businesses such as his. He hit the first wall in January when he discovered that chews and other treats were classed as animal feed, and each dispatch needed a health certificate. Not only was it £200 extra cost for each order, whether the consignment was worth £40,000 or £500, but the precise health certificate did not exist for antler chews and any other of his unusual products. He and his wife moved to a small town east of Lyon and have set up a new business, Nova Dog Chews, to fulfil European orders, while his company continues in Ayrshire to make and supply the UK market. The expansion in Europe will cost the UK. This move will obviously mean a loss in tax revenue, jobs and investment in the UK economy, he said. And now to Russia, where the Kremlin says that military movements near Ukraine are defensive. The Kremlin said today that recent Russian troop and military hardware movements near Russia's borders with Ukraine were aimed at ensuring Moscow's own security and were not a threat to anyone. Ukraine's commander-in-chief this week accused Moscow of building up forces near their shared border and said that pro-Russian separatists were systematically violating a ceasefire in eastern Ukraine amid rising tensions. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters in a conference call that Moscow moved its troops around Russia as it saw fit. And now to the Kennel Club and an Easter warning to dog owners. Experts have warned that chocolate treats lying around at Easter can potentially cause fatal health problems for dogs. According to data from the Kennel Club, incidents of canine chocolate poisoning more than double over the Easter period when compared with other months. Obviously, there is chocolate around at Christmas, but let's be honest, Easter is a time for chocolate and where everybody seems to have chocolate Easter eggs, said Bill Lambert, the head of health and welfare at the Kennel Club. Chocolate can be dangerous for dogs as it contains a substance called theobromine, which canines break down and clear more slowly than humans do. As a result, dogs can experience faster heart rate, diarrhea, agitation, vomiting and seizures, and in rare cases they can die. The darker the chocolate, the higher the level of theobromine and the greater the risk to dogs. The figures came from the Kennel Club's insurance partner, Agria Pet Insurance, which found that cases of chocolate poisoning rose by 235% over the 4-week Easter period in 2019 and 2018, when compared with all other months in those years. So I guess a happy Easter for humans, but be careful with the chocolate and don't let your dogs get it. That is about all the news I have for you this evening on this edition of Scotland at 7. But remember that Broadcasting Scotland is in the middle of a crowdfunder just now. So if you'd like to see more programmes from us, and you would like to help us, you can do that by becoming a regular supporter for £5 per month, or you can make an individual donation or even volunteer to work here in the studio. But that's about it from this edition of Scotland at 7. I'll be back again tomorrow with Friday's edition. But from all of us here at the studio, a very good evening to you.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.